All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and it is 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. For our participants that are joining us today or via Facebook, we will also have this recorded on our website, and as a reminder, you can submit questions to us through the chat feature on Zoom, or you can also submit those through Facebook Live. So my name is Andrea Seitz. I serve as the President and CEO for Show Me Christian County, and we are grateful today to have some top leaders from Ozarks Technical Community College joining us. I'd like to go through the bios of our panelists, and then we can move forward into our discussion. So joining us today, we have Dr. Jeff Jochems. Dr. Jochems currently serves as the OTC president at the Richwood Valley campus that is here in Christian County. Previously, Dr. Jochems has served the college as the Assistant Vice President for Administrative Services, Dean of Student Services, Dean of Student Development, Assistant Dean of Admissions, and Director of Financial Aid. Dr. Jochems is also a strong voice for economic development, having served on the board of the Ozarks Chamber and as a member of the Taney County Partnership. And I know he also served on the board of the Nixa Chamber. We also have Dr. Tracy McGrady. Dr. McGrady serves as Provost and Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at OTC. Previously, she served in academic and administrative roles at Missouri State University, then joined OTC in 2001 as a communication instructor. During her tenure at OTC, she has also served as Director of Grants Development, Assistant to the Vice Chancellor for Advancement, Student Affairs, and Workforce Development, and Dean of Academic and Student Affairs at the OTC Richwood Valley campus. Dr. McGrady has also taught as an adjunct professor for Lindenwood University. And lastly, rounding out our panel, we have Dr. Matthew Hudson. Dr. Hudson serves as Executive Dean of Career, Technical, and Community Development at OTC. He is a Springfield native and a lifelong educator, having worked as assistant principal at Hillcrest and Parkview High Schools, coordinator of secondary operations at Springfield Public Schools, and now as the Dean of Technical Education at OTC. He also teaches classes as an adjunct instructor to keep his perspective focused on student learning. So welcome. We are so grateful that you all have taken your time to join us this morning and to share your insights on upskilling, really in this post-COVID world. Holistic workforce development is something that we at Show Me Christian County are big champions of, but this has really brought to light that some of those vocational skills are very recession proof, as those essential skills are needed no matter what the economy looks like. So with that, we'd kind of like to turn it over to you, and we do have some questions, but any insights or questions for us before we dig into those today?
I don't think I have any questions. Again, just want to thank you for the opportunity for us to be on the call and share what OTC is doing. So
wonderful. Well, with that, digging right into COVID, obviously we've been several weeks into this. We're going to try to go back to our monthly normal operations in June. But walk us through what OTC's response to COVID-19 has looked like from your students' perspective and also moving forward from this crisis.
Well, I guess I can go ahead and start. Is that all right? Okay. Of course, we transitioned our semester to remote learning about the middle of March, right before spring break. We made the decision based upon guidance from our local health officials, local and state health officials. And so our students, I will say, and our faculty transitioned marvelously. And I think some of that is due to the fact that we rely so heavily on our learning management system, Canvas, that we use. And so our students were very accustomed to it. Our faculty were accustomed to it. And so that made the transition so much smoother. It wasn't without its challenges, of course. We had students who did not have access to the technology that they needed, or perhaps did not have reliable internet service at home. And so we had to make some adjustments and help out some of those students just kind of on an individual basis, but then also opening up computer labs at our locations to make sure that students still had access. We had students who were participating in classes from our parking lots, accessing our Wi-Fi. But we really mobilized and did a calling campaign. We called every single student at OTC and reached out to them individually to see what their needs were, if they had needs, if they were having difficulties. And we were able to assist many, many students that we probably wouldn't have known otherwise that they were having those issues. And so we're really, really proud of that. And we actually did that twice for the remainder, throughout the remainder from March until the end of the semester. So really proud of the effort that we put in. I think everyone's kind of exhausted at this point, but we made it through, and we're really proud of the way that we continue to serve those students.
Absolutely. And, you know, those kind of active learning opportunities are things that we have also taken advantage of, and, you know, in a different light, to kind of find the blessing in the midst of all of this, and being able to let your students know that there is that personal connection, you know, that you are truly invested, I'm sure was really valuable. So everything can change in an instant. We know that. We don't know what the next round of orders will look like, if there will be a next round of orders. All those discussions are being had now. But currently, what does it look like to move into the fall semester?
Currently, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but currently I will tell you we are having those conversations literally on a daily basis. And there is so much that we don't know at this point, but we are committed to the plan right now is that we begin our fall semester as just normal, if you can say that. But always we will be following, again, that local and state guidance from our health officials. We are creating several contingency plans because the primary responsibility we feel like we have to our OTC community, students and employees, is of course their health and their safety. And so we are actually, in fact, I had a meeting this morning and we talked about what that might look like. And we've talked about the possibility of screening students, limiting entrances. It really just depends on what we see over the summer. But the plan right now is that we will have seated classes, at least in some capacity, in the fall semester. So, but we're monitoring, like I said, literally on a daily basis.
So let me add just real quickly to that, just so people have an understanding too. Currently, we are in the process of transitioning our staffs back to campus over the next few weeks, with the plans on June 1st that we will be back open to the public and fully staffed on all of our campuses and locations. So still want to practice all the social distancing and all the guidelines, but we will be available and open to the public starting on June 1. And then also for summer, when those summer classes start, the majority of all of our classes will be online for the summer. We will have a few specific programs, some allied health mainly, that might be doing a little bit of seated on campus, again, practicing all kinds of social distancing. But that's sort of the plans going forward, sort of here in the next few weeks.
And that was my question, you know, the summer. I jumped right into fall, but thank you for addressing that summer issue. Are there courses that you either were not able to complete in person through this semester, or are there courses that you anticipate not being able to offer in the future because of the pandemic?
We have some direct experience with that in the areas I oversee. It was very difficult when there's no model for everything with COVID-19 to try and replicate hands-on technical and allied health skills that honestly the hallmark is being able to practice in person and do those kinds of things. There's a lot you can accomplish with technology and simulation, but there's a lot you can't. And honestly, there are not good places across the country who have achieved that either. Best is really when you reach out to your network of friends and professional colleagues to find out what are you doing? And guess what? They weren't doing the same thing we were doing. They didn't have a good solution. So that made you feel a little bit better, but you were still on edge to some degree. But I can tell you we did, I think, the best we could, and honestly had great results from it. We brought back some post-secondary students about 3-4 weeks ago in small groups. We hand scheduled students into labs based upon capacity, practice social distancing, use protective measures, logged entrance into the buildings, all kinds of things to make sure that people felt safe. It was optional, which was a key to this. And honestly, we were taken up, most people took up the opportunity to come in and finish those skills. So no one was held back, so to speak, for not being able to make academic progress if they couldn't return because of their situation at home or just their maybe even anxiety to do so, which was nice, but we had a nice response for that. it taught us some lessons. As Dr. McGrady mentioned, for the fall, we are spending our summer in the hands-on practical programs, really developing better ways and different ways to try and learn from the lessons we did in a very quick fashion, and then also try to front load as much as possible. So I think it really helped us pivot, and that quick pivot is actually what caused us to have some good creative problem solving. And I feel like students felt like they got what they needed for those that were ready to graduate and or continue. And then it helped us prepare as faculty and administration, provide a better experience for students come fall, whatever that might look like.
Thank you, Dr. Hudson. This has definitely been an equalizer. You mentioned reaching out to your network, and everyone is in a first time right now. And so in a lot of ways, sometimes that's been terrifying, sometimes it's been comforting, but we've all kind of gotten through it together. And it sounds like you've pivoted in some really impactful ways to be able to serve your student community. So you mentioned healthcare, and healthcare has obviously been at the forefront of this pandemic. With that industry, or are there other industries that you are expecting and to see an influx in demand for those particular courses moving into future semesters?
We have actually already. It's been interesting. We weren't really sure, what we would see in our allied health programs. Certainly, the two areas that we're seeing the most increased demand is in nursing. That's the first. Our applications for our nursing programs are way up over where they were last year. And also another one that we're seeing an uptick, as you might imagine, is respiratory therapy. And that is a really such a great career field that I think a lot of people just really hadn't been educated about. And if there is anything good that has come out of this situation, I think people have gotten a new appreciation for respiratory therapists in the midst of a pandemic that is a respiratory virus. And so we are seeing quite a bit of an uptick in applications for that program as well. So those two are the ones right now that we're really seeing the most interest in, but we're really encouraged by that as well, and looking to find ways that we can serve those populations of people who are interested in those careers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know with OTC, you have a good balanced population of both, those fresh high school grads and then a lot of our adult learners. In that, are these maybe even health professionals that were in careers that were not able to continue because they may have been elective and different things, and they might be trying to retrain and adapt those skills? Have you seen that at all?
Yeah, we have seen a little bit of that. We've seen some folks who, sadly had lost their employment through this, that are looking at possibilities. And of course, like you said, they are looking for those recession-proof industries where they might, be able to find a career. And the good news is, in healthcare, there's always demand. And I know we've heard recently about, the hospitals, some of the hospitals laying people off. Most of that really has had to do with the fact that they haven't been able to do elective procedures and elective surgeries. And so, but there is still a shortage. There is definitely a nursing shortage in our area. There's a shortage of respiratory therapists. We need physical therapists and physical therapist assistants. And so all of those areas are areas where there is great demand, and we have seen more of an interest from people who have lost jobs.
And that's really at the core of why we wanted to host this webinar in particular, why we make it a priority to stay in constant communication with our education institutions and our employers, because that's why we were created as a whole, to work on increasing those daytime job opportunities and make sure that our residents can be gainfully employed or employed to their fullest capacity. Through this COVID-19, I've heard some people refer to it as the Great Reset. We also went through the Great Recession, of course. What, from OTC's perspective, have you seen as industries that are kind of recession-proof or bulletproof, if you will, and that are kind of safe bets as people are looking to upskill?
We honestly, as Dr. McGrady mentioned, healthcare has always been something that seems to be the perpetual shortage. And obviously this being a medical crisis is what has caused that to even further ramp up. But from There are lots of other areas that still have a high demand in our area, specifically for employment in the Southwest Missouri region, specifically even in Christian County are those folks. Jobs that are able to be done remotely have increased their demand. So those with computer background, programming skills, website development, app development, those jobs were able to kind of to ride through this, and honestly look for more people to take that opportunity if they had something that caused them to lose childcare or something where they needed to be home. It gave them some flexibility and enhanced maybe the appeal for that for folks. We still see a high demand in construction trades. There's a little bit of a lag in the way the construction industry works right now. Work being done was bid, 6-8 months ago in many cases. So although we don't know what the future holds, contracts are still coming out for that kind of work. There are a lot of local commercial real estate things going on, not real estate, I'm sorry, construction things going on right now for public and private both. And so I think that has helped kind of sustain that industry. Although there tends to be a dip in residential building, the contracts for those right now were issued prior to this, and those are to completion. There are skill needs in welding and fabrication, manufacturing. And as Dr. McGrady mentioned, even though you hear sometimes on the news or read in the newspaper and things that those jobs are not recession proof or people are losing those jobs, it usually comes down to a person whose skill set is very limited or in a single capacity. We do a good job of trying to create a more diversified employee no matter what field they enter. So I think that helps them come back, or they realize that maybe they need to enhance their skills and things of that nature. We have a lot of corporate partnerships we do with larger industries in Southwest Missouri. I can tell you we signed an agreement this morning for a local company that is continuing. So even though their ability to pay out things, might be limited, they've continued that commitment for their own sustainability. I think that right there shows that the local employment sector is really trying to protect their own, not only their own employees, but also their bottom line. So there are a lot of opportunities. More service-related jobs are where you see people being laid off, unless it's in grocery stores and things where there's been a larger amount of revenue coming in. So those folks have taken time to step back during this unemployment and reach out to us about what some options they have based on the skills that they bring to the table.
And thank you so much for walking us through that. You mentioned employers, and that was my very next question. Are there resources for employers seeking to assist their employees with that upscaling effort, maybe as they have, their needs have changed, their business model is changing, or they just want to see them be successful? How would an employer go about reaching out to you for a training assistance?
We really can develop what we call a concierge kind of service, depending on whatever your needs are. So if you're a company of 25 or a company of 2,500, we're able to kind of tailor those needs for that. One of the unfortunate pieces of this, we all know that general revenue for the state is down, and that's where some workforce training dollars come from. And to be perfectly honest, it's completely up in the air. We recognize the commitment for workforce development, but if there's no dollars available for that in discretionary funding, then that becomes an easy target. However, there are some federal flow-through monies that come through the state that we're still able to access, and the budget was just passed a couple of weeks ago in the General Assembly, and there were reductions in local efforts to help skill up workforce, and there are some that are on hold. So what I mentioned a minute ago was really more of a company that decided to keep their own budget in place to support that. But I do anticipate, with the fact that the current administration's political slant has been workforce development, even though that was interrupted and the general revenue has declined and those receipts aren't there to pay for some of that, the state knows that that has to be a priority in order for us to have and get through this. If we just sort of ride the status quo, that really creates a higher unemployment for a longer period of time. So I do look for those dollars, although not to be at the funding they were perhaps before this happened, not to be interrupted as significantly as some other areas. And then there are lots of some of the federal legislation has provided some workforce funding that can be done there. So that's kind of a long answer to answer your question. There are still resources available. I would encourage companies to contact any of us at OTC and help them determine what might be the best fit for them. Sometimes it's a company-driven model, and sometimes it's an individually driven model where the actual student accesses the funds, and with the employer's cooperation for time release or something like that can really achieve those skills in a short time frame. both in credit and non-credit, more customized training that's accelerated.
We so much appreciate it. And I don't know if you saw, I got a really big smile when you said you have a concierge approach, because that is definitely something that we try to embody in our organization. And, you know, there's really no cookie cutter, because all of our business needs are different, or how, even if there might be a similar industry, how that company chooses to operate their individual organization is different. And we're so grateful for that here in our region, to have partners like you that are also focused on it. Want to go back and touch on one thing that you said, Dr. Hudson, and that's in relation to construction. So through COVID, we are already starting to look at future trends, future projections, and that maybe some of those residents that were migrating out of rural areas into those metro cores, now they want their space back. You know, they've potentially been trapped throughout metros across the country in very small apartments and different things. And we are hearing that suburbs and rural areas are really positioned for a strong amount of growth, which would continue to impact the residential growth here in Christian County, as well as the commercial eventually. But walk us through that program for people that may be on the line, or that can find these resources in direct relation to the construction services you offer.
And I want to clarify your question. Are you talking about folks who would be moving into Southwest Missouri from other states or other regions, or even just the folks who are right here right now, or is it kind of a combo of both?
Sure. What we're hearing is a combo of both. Again, we don't know yet. It's still really early on, but just as people are looking at trends and the feel of the general public, that they want to move back into where there's a backyard and different things, where if they're stuck at home, it's a little more comfortable.
Yeah, so, you know, our land and cost of labor is cheaper here than in many areas of the country. So we do see relocation occur after there are major crises that's happened after Hurricane Katrina, various things like that, where people migrated to this area. I really hadn't thought about that till you brought that up, but that is a trend that occurs. I think that people will probably access those kinds of things and have potentially a population doing here, bring their skills and do that. So that actually could sustain the residential market to some degree if they're trying to find land to build their own home or something of that nature. But as far as our urban core here is not necessarily the same as it would be in a larger, 500,000 or greater area that you might see. We're not necessarily in apartment complexes that are just row after row of them, or single housing that's really in tight quarters. We tend to have land is cheap and easy to get here, comparatively speaking, so that allows people to have more space to spread out. So that's an interesting phenomenon that I hadn't really considered. But I do think my comment earlier about the fact that there's a construction lag just by the nature of the business, 6 to 8 months from now, if people are making the decision to relocate, that when these current contracts that started back around the winter time, Christmas time, begin to fade out as 6 to 8 months of work goes by, that would put us into early fall. Someone chooses to relocate around this time now and make plans to build something because they have the resources to do so, because our cost of living is cheaper, that certainly would keep that pipeline running. I do think the commercial one, just to reiterate, will continue because so many things were bid for public and private projects that are long-term construction projects. It's typically residential construction that suffers during any kind of recession more than commercial real estate does.
Yeah, and I appreciate the clarification. That's definitely something that we're looking closely to. And so if we do start seeing that boom, we'll definitely be directing folks your way.
And we can train them. So yes, please do so.
That's right. You mentioned land, and this is something, local food is really been heightened through this. And Dr. Jochems knows that agriculture is a big passion of mine. Walk us through at Richwood Valley, Dr. Jochems, if you would, what the increased agricultural capacity looks like for those that are in this area and maybe wanting to expand their knowledge from that base.
Sure, thanks. Again, now that we have the ag program moved out to Richwood Valley and we've got green space to actually work with, it's opened up a lot of potential opportunities for that program. And certainly Matt can fill into some of the courses that they're considering. I know one of the big areas that we're concentrating on now is putting in some fencing so that we can bring live animals to campus, which we are very excited about. And so that's going to continue through the summer, even though we may not have a lot of courses going on. We're planning for that fall and that future by trying to get some fencing up, and so that we can have those live animals on campus. Matt might be able to speak a little bit more to maybe some of those kind of ag type, homegrown or crop type courses and those types of things that we might be considering.
As far as food insecurity goes, and what I mean by that is not food insecurity from a financial standpoint, but from the food chain, from the sources where they come from. If things aren't locally sourced, you're highly dependent on areas to bring those in terms of a logistics chain, and that we've seen some scares of that with various products, consumer products. That also has heightened some interest for people that have maybe a little bit of a hobby farming mindset, or it has ramped up production for people that are in a production, agricultural, or livestock setting anyway. So to answer for Dr. Jochems there, what he said, we do see some increased need for access and the understanding of how to be able to cultivate and do your own things as much as possible, specifically with meat production, and then also with row cropping, things you can do in a rocky Southwest Missouri. You can still grow row crops. It's not as easy as it is in other parts of our state, but it's possible. Even if that's a home garden, some people may not be looking for this from a financial standpoint to actually keep their livelihood going, but just for their own family in their own household, picking up some of those kinds of hobbies and learning more about that. So yeah, we are very excited about having the ability to train with livestock. That's not something we were able to offer on the corner of Chestnut and National very easily, but we certainly can in Christian County where Richwood Valley is located. So that was a key piece to that move. And Dr. Jochems has been able to see that develop right out his window, and it's been wonderful to have that acreage available there and train students for something that really does relieve some anxiety about food insecurity in terms of the food chain.
Yeah, just to tag on to a little bit of that too, just a piece of what we're hoping to gain by having the green space is doing some of those grazing types of courses so that you can teach people, if you only have 30 acres of property, how do you have a little bit of livestock, and how do you have some of your own row crops, and how do you move things around so that you can do that in what might be relatively a small amount of space. So those are the kinds of things we're looking toward doing, being able to have those kinds of opportunities, again, since we've got the acreage and the space to do it.
I'm really excited about hearing that. And, COVID has definitely brought to the forefront of a lot of family dinner table conversations, where does our food come from? And industries, my husband and I have a very small trucking company. And so industries like trucking, agriculture, some of those basic things have really been brought to the spotlight. And I'm very grateful that we'll be able to have those resources right here in Christian County, right on 14 Highway. So, as we look to wrap this up, there are a few more questions that I have for you. If someone is looking to upskill and they're looking for those things due to a COVID-19 related layoff, how do they go about starting that process with OTC?
And Dr. McGrady may want to chime in on some of the initial processes too, but from my perspective, what the areas that we train with more hands-on technical kinds of things, there are opportunities through various grant programs that they can access, like I mentioned before too. So I would encourage anyone who wants to start to really examine our website and look and see what interests them, where they feel like they have a chance to read and digest the information that's helpful. And then there are numerous resources that are outlined. As Dr. Jochems mentioned earlier, I'm working remotely and still working through some of those things, but we have people that are able to access things through live chat on our website. There's a frequently asked questions section. There are ways to schedule both virtual and in-person appointments. So all those resources are available. I would just encourage people to kind of do their homework, the old teacher in me, and look in there and see what you can find, and then reach out and ask questions. The best way to really align someone and advise them well is to have a relationship-based conversation and say, what do you bring to the table? What challenges or barriers might you have? And what can we help you overcome in terms of the resources we have access to? Those conversations, people typically think about starting back to school when school starts. My suggestion would be to do that right now, because really some of this can start anytime. And so there's no reason to wait. If you've got a free moment and you want to do some homework, get on OTC's website, take a look at the options. We have numerous programs over all the areas, not only the ones discussed today, but certainly other areas. So don't feel like this is the scope is limited to what we spoke about today, and really figure out what aligns with you, and then reach out to us to be able to help you build a package that fits you. Again, back to that service that we try and provide for people.
Yes, and I would just add to that, I think that's great advice, just to get on our website, look around, see what's interesting. Something that we're doing here at OTC, and I think actually this health crisis and us having to shift our operations due to the pandemic has brought to the forefront for us how much people really are looking for that personal service, that concierge service. And so that's something that it was actually a focus of ours even before the pandemic, was how do we really give our students a personal experience here at OTC? And we've changed our advising model as an example of that. But it is certainly heightened for us that we realized as we were reaching out to all of those students, as we were bringing our live chat back to the forefront, we've had so many more students who have really taken advantage of that, and community members too, to ask us questions. And so we're just trying to make ourselves more available, even though so many of us are still working remotely. But as we transition back on to, more of a regular schedule, it is really important to us that we make ourselves available to anyone who's interested.
Thank you, Dr. McGrady. As far as your programs, two big questions, I think, before we roll up here. Is someone locked into a full 2 years, or is there something that they can do in a short term through programs that you offer to go ahead and gain some more skills?
There are numerous programs that are short and long term. Honestly, skilling up, so going back to someone who's been doing something for a number of years and maybe needs some additional skills is one example. There are programs that are designed to be as short as 20 weeks. We have a 20-week welding program for credit that starts in early August and goes through 20 weeks, so right around December timeframe. We've already thought about what happens if COVID 2.0 comes back in the fall, and we'll work through to get those skills in place. We have things as short as a phlebotomy course. Do you want to go through and do something that can really get you a pretty high earning wage job that's readily available in many cases without a long-term commitment? So I think it really goes back to a potential student or even a current student looking to think about what time they have that they can commit, how it fits into their schedule, and then let us work through and help solve any barriers through advising and conversation. So there are a lot of different things. The menu is not what you might think of necessarily as a traditional program that might take 2 years or longer. We have those available, and that fits folks too, but we also have the ones who need information and answers and kind of training right now.
Yeah, and it's always good to have that reminder, and that's why I wanted to ask the question. And this is obviously a tough financial crunch for a lot of families. So you mentioned grants. If someone wants to upskill but they are hesitant because of a financial barrier that might be in place, what recommendations or resources do you have to suggest for us today?
I would say one thing is, and Dr. Hudson mentioned this too, the importance of, go ahead right now and reach out and fill out the FAFSA, for instance, to see what kind of federal financial aid you might qualify for, Pell Grants, student loans, that sort of thing. Of course, for our high school students and those graduating high school, we have the A+ program, which of course is very active in Christian County. I know the schools there participate in. We have fast track funding through the state that is also available. That's something Governor Parson put into place a few months ago. And so there are a lot of different avenues. I know I'm not speaking to all of them. We have institutional scholarships, foundation scholarships. We do everything we can to make sure that money is not the barrier for students, for people who are wanting to come back.
Yeah, let me tack on and just reiterate again the fact that if you're interested at all, reach out to us. We are trying to make ourselves available in every format possible. So if you do want to come in, we can make that available starting June 1. You can come in and still do a Zoom session with somebody. We're available online. So as Dr. Hudson mentioned, going to the website, there's several drop-down menus in there for students to get access to advisors for courses and programs, to financial aid people that can talk about all the programs Dr. McGrady mentioned. They'll help you step through the FAFSA form if you've never done that before. We have people available that can help you step through that process. So again, just want to make sure that people know that we have those resources available now, even today, if they want to get started.
Thank you so much. And as a reminder, Dr. Jochems, I'm going to toss my last question to you. Give us the rundown. What can people do right here at home, right here in Christian County at our Richwood Valley campus?
And certainly we have most general education courses that a student would need for just about any of our transfer programs. They can get most of those courses right here at Richwood Valley. Then we also have the ag program that we've mentioned that we've recently moved and looking to expand that greatly. Then we have the physical therapist assistant program is here at Richwood Valley, along with the medical lab technician program. So those are all programs that are housed only at Richwood Valley. If you're interested in one of those three, those are only offered here at Richwood Valley. And then of course, all the gen ed that I mentioned earlier.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate the recap again. Dr. McGrady, Dr. Hudson, thank you for joining us. Dr. Jochems, thank you for helping us schedule this and for being such an important part of our community here in Christian County. We're grateful to have OTC as a strong partner with us at Show Me Christian County. And if anyone has any additional questions, they can submit those to info@showmeccmo.com. We'll be sure to get them to our panelists or connect you to those resources. And we want to be mindful of all of your time. So thank you again for joining us. And we look forward to speaking with you on the other side in person someday.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.